Why did we believe the middle class would last forever? They told us we had arrived, that history had ended, that if we worked hard enough, stayed in school and bought a house, we'd be safe, wrapped in the warm security of stability. The American dream wasn't just alive, it had become a contract. But what happens when that dream begins to dissolve? Not with a bang, but with the quiet dread of unpaid bills, gig work, and the creeping sense that something is slipping, silently, through your fingers. You scroll through job listings at midnight. Entry level means 5 years experience. Rent is half your paycheck. You have a degree, maybe 2, but no health insurance. And somewhere deep down, a voice asks, wasn't I promised more than this? This isn't a temporary crisis. It's not bad luck or poor planning. It's the structural unraveling of a class that was never meant to survive. The middle class, as it was sold to us, was not a destination, but a detour. A necessary illusion to pacify the many, while the few consolidated everything. Behind the smiles of suburbia was always a clock ticking. The house, the car, the savings account. Not signs of freedom, but cages of consumption, built on borrowed time. Because in capitalism, nothing stays in the middle. It expands or it collapses, and the middle class is collapsing. So the question isn't what went wrong. The real question is, was it ever meant to work at all? You were never meant to own the house, only to believe you could. The middle class was not born from generosity. It was carved out of necessity. A buffer zone designed in the aftermath of war and revolution to prevent the working class from realizing its true power. To keep the poor from rising, they needed a class that thought it had something to lose. But who built the staircase between poverty and wealth? Not you, not your parents. That staircase was designed by the owners of capital, and every step was lined with debt, dependency, and distraction. Wages stagnated while productivity soared. CEOs made 400 times more than their workers, and yet you were told you're doing fine because you had a lawn, a credit card, a job title. But comfort is not liberation, it's sedation. The middle class was given just enough to keep quiet, but never enough to break free. You got health care if you kept your job. You got a pension if the market allowed. You got a mortgage as long as the bank owned your future. This is not an economic malfunction. This is ideology in motion. The illusion that the system rewards merit, when in truth, it rewards proximity to capital. And now, as that illusion crumbles, the truth becomes visible. The middle class was not a foundation, it was scaffolding, and scaffolding is meant to be removed once the structure of domination is complete. What does it mean to own something? In a system where everything can be taken from you? They told you ownership was the goal. The house, the car, the college degree. But ownership under capitalism is conditional, a leash disguised as a reward. You own a home, but miss one payment and the bank reminds you who truly holds the title. You own your education, but student debt chains you for decades. You own your time, but it's already been sold 5 days a week in 8-hour increments to someone else. Ownership becomes a performance, a mask you wear to feel safe while the walls around you close in. This is what Marx called the fetishism of commodities, where objects are not just things, but symbols of value, identity, even worthiness. You don't just buy a house, you buy status. You don't just drive a car, you drive relevance. But these things don't liberate you, they trap you, because behind every object lies a contract, financial, emotional, existential. The need to keep producing, earning, sacrificing. To maintain the illusion of independence while you slowly dissolve under the weight of recurring payments. Imagine a man in a golden cage. The door is open, but he won't leave. Because outside there's no security, and inside, he thinks he's free. That's not ownership, that's engineered dependence. In the end, the only thing you truly own under capitalism is your labor. And even that, they buy cheap. You were told the latter was real. That if you worked hard, played by the rules, sacrificed your youth, you would climb. That each generation would live better than the last. That progress was inevitable. But look around. The ladder is gone, replaced by a treadmill, where you run faster just to stay in place. Or worse, to fall more slowly. Your parents bought homes on one income. You juggle 3 jobs and can't afford rent. They retired at 60. You'll be working until your body fails. They had savings. You have subscriptions. This is not an accident. It's the logic of late capitalism. Profit over people, growth over dignity, extraction over stability. Because mobility threatens hierarchy. If too many rise, the top becomes crowded. The ruling class needs you dreaming, not arriving. So they sold you hope. Branded it, monetized it, packaged it in university brochures and LinkedIn posts. And when the promise failed, they blamed you. You chose the wrong major. You don't work hard enough. You should have invested earlier. But how do you invest when you can barely eat? How do you climb when the rungs are missing? A man stands at the base of a collapsed ladder, staring upward. He's told to reach higher. But every step has been auctioned off. Every opportunity outsourced. Every safety net turned into a trap. And still the system whispers, try harder. But maybe it's not you who failed. Maybe the dream was never yours to begin with. If everything is so convenient, why do we feel so lost? You can order food, schedule therapy, and apply for jobs, all from the same screen. You're more connected than any generation before you. And yet, never have so many felt so disconnected from themselves, from each other, from life. Marx called it alienation, the quiet violence of being torn from your own labor, your own purpose, your own sense of meaning. You spend your days performing tasks you didn't choose, for goals you don't believe in, under rules you didn't create. Your work feels like a role in someone else's script. You smile for customers, type reports no one reads, attend meetings that drain your soul. And at the end of the day, you wonder, what did I actually create? Capitalism doesn't just exploit your body, it fractures your spirit. You become a stranger to your own life. Your passion becomes content. Your rest becomes productivity hacks. Your joy becomes monetized. And so you scroll endlessly, searching for something that feels real. But the screen only reflects what the system allows you to see. Curated lives, empty victories, artificial connection. There's a man eating alone in a perfectly decorated apartment. The food was delivered. The playlist is algorithmic. The smile is for Instagram. But the silence is deafening. Because convenience isn't fulfillment. Efficiency isn't freedom. And the more we adapt to a system that reduces us to consumers, the more we forget what it means to be human. The truth is, you were never meant to feel whole in a system that profits from your emptiness. If the truth could set us free, why is it so hard to find? In a world drowning in content, silence speaks volumes. The kind of silence that hides the suffering of millions behind stock markets and celebrity gossip. That buries systemic injustice beneath headlines of economic recovery. This is not journalism. It's programming. What you call news is often narrative, carefully selected, strategically framed, and endlessly repeated. Not to inform you, but to shape you. To engineer not just what you know, but what you believe is possible. This is what Noam Chomsky called manufactured consent, but Marx saw it too. Ideology, a system of beliefs designed to justify and maintain exploitation. You're told the economy is booming, while you skip meals to pay rent. You're told unemployment is low, while you freelance for pennies without health care. You're told to be grateful, while billionaires double their wealth off your exhaustion. But where is the outrage? Buried under Netflix queues, TikTok trends, and feel-good ads from oil companies. The media doesn't lie blatantly. It distracts surgically. It pacifies with stories of individual success, framing systemic collapse as personal failure. If someone makes it, you could too. So keep hustling. Don't look around. Don't ask questions. And if you do, you're labeled bitter, lazy, conspiratorial, or worse, radical. There's a scene, A man screams in a burning room, but everyone around him is staring at their phones. The news ticker reads, "All is well." That's not ignorance, that's control. Because the greatest trick of the ruling class was never stealing your labor. It was making you believe that your suffering is normal. What if the system was never broken, but built to break you? The middle class wasn't meant to last. It was a buffer, a temporary illusion of fairness designed to buy time, to delay the reckoning, to prevent rebellion. In the golden age of capitalism, workers won just enough: a car, a house, a pension. But only because capital needed loyalty more than profit, for a while. As soon as globalization, automation, and deregulation made human labor less essential, the mask slipped. The safety nets were cut. Unions were dismantled. Wages froze while costs soared. And the wealth you created was siphoned upward, into offshore accounts, stock buybacks, and executive bonuses. This is not an economic downturn. It is a transfer of power. The ruling class understood something crucial. A disillusioned worker is dangerous, but a desperate one is obedient. And so the collapse was orchestrated, gradual enough to blame the individual, sharp enough to instill fear, wrapped in language like austerity, personal responsibility, and the invisible hand. A factory closes, a neighborhood crumbles, a generation drowns in debt, and the headlines call it market correction. But you can only correct what you control. Imagine a chessboard. The pieces move, but the rules never change. And no matter how far the pawns advance, they can never become kings. This is not chaos. This is strategy. And now, as the center collapses, the question is not what went wrong. The question is, how much longer will we play a game designed for us to lose? What if the greatest act of rebellion is to finally see the system not as broken, but as functioning exactly as it was designed? See your exhaustion not as a personal failing, but as the fuel of an economy built on extraction. See your loneliness not as weakness, but as the product of engineered alienation. Awareness is not a comfort, it's a fire, because once you begin to see, you can't unsee. You look at your job and notice the invisible chains. You hear the news and recognize the script. You walk through a store and feel the weight of commodified dreams. But awareness is also the first crack in the machine. When you know the game is rigged, you stop blaming yourself for losing. When you name your alienation, you reclaim your humanity. And when you connect your pain to others, you become dangerous. Because solidarity threatens everything. A man wakes up in a glass cage. He thought it was a home, a career, a life. But now he sees the bars made of debt, distraction, and quiet desperation. And for the first time, he begins to push. This isn't about abandoning hope. It's about finding a hope rooted in truth, not in consumer dreams, but in collective power. Karl Marx once wrote, "The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it." The middle class was never the end of history. It was a pause, a myth, fragile shield. And now that it's cracking, we can finally ask, what kind of world could we build if we stop trying to save this one? Maybe you felt it too. That quiet grief for a life you were promised but never lived. The exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. The sense that you're always running but never arriving. So ask yourself, how many years have you spent trying to fix a system that was never designed to care for you? How much of your worth has been tied to what you earn instead of who you are? What would it mean to stop surviving and start imagining something more? If this video helped you see the world a little clearer, consider supporting this channel with a super thanks. Your contribution helps us keep creating content that cuts through the noise and reaches those who are ready to awaken. And if this message resonated with you, subscribe and join us again next week, where we'll go even deeper into the truth behind your labor, your life, and your liberation. Because the collapse isn't the end, it's the beginning.